Let's consider basic and applied physiology. And so we're going to be talking about epithelial tissue. Well, we first know that for us to have a tissue, we need to have cells. So cells which have got related function get to come together and they're going to form a tissue. So in the body, there are four different types of tissues. So even if we have got so many cells, all the cells are just going to be paired up into four different types of tissues. And one of those types of tissues is the epithelial tissue that we're going to talk about. So the epithelial tissue has got the apical surface, the basal, and the lateral side. Now, these are the four different types of tissue. We've got the nervous tissue, epithelial tissue, the muscle, and the connective tissue. So when you get to look at the nervous tissue, the cells are elongated, meaning they are a bit of longer because they have to be transmitting information from one part of the body to the other. That's why they get even to be very long. So their extracellular matrix for this, they are very small amounts. So we're going to understand what extracellular matrix is. So we also have epithelial tissue, which is just made up of polyhedral cells, meaning that they are cells of different shapes. So for this one, the epithelial tissue is also small. So for the nervous tissue, basically we'll say that the extracellular matrix is not even there because it is very, very small. So it is not there. While the epithelial tissue has got a small amount of extracellular matrix, we also have muscle tissue, which is made up of contractile cells, cells which are able to contract. So the extracellular matrix is in moderate amount. And then we have got connective tissue, which is having different types of cells. And also the extracellular matrix is a lot, right? So when we are talking about the components of an organ, because when you have got a cell, it's going to go into tissue, and then a lot of tissues are going to form an organ, and a lot of organs will form an organism. So organs can be made up of two components. We have got the parenchyma, okay, because for us to have the organ we need to have cells. So we have got parenchyma and the stroma. When you're talking about parenchyma, this is simply composed of the cells which are responsible for the many function. And then the stroma is the supporting tissue. So you see, if I've got this cell which is supposed to help, let's say, in diffusion, there are all those other cells which are going to be protecting that cell so that it makes sure that it does the diffusion. So those other cells just for support. That's what we call the stroma. Or those other tissues for support is what we call stroma, right? So when we have got a tissue, we know that the tissue is made up of cells, but not only cells, because cells alone will not be able to stick together. So there are all these different things which have to be there for cells to be able to stick together. Think of this. When you have got bricks, you want to make a house, just alone like that, you are not able to make a house. You need to have mud, you need to have gravel and all these other things. So that is what we call the extracellular matrix. That is which is going to hold the cells together. So the extracellular matrix is also going to be divided into protein fibers and also ground substance. So you can think of the ground substance as being the same. So you have got cells which are the bricks, and then you also have the other component which is the extracellular matrix, the other component that is going to make sure that the house gets to stand. And then you are going to have the mud which you are going to be able to use so that the bricks are able to stick together. That is the ground substance. But well, the mud alone also make the house weak. So we're going to have things like wires and different things just to make sure that the mud also is able to stick more properly. So that is what we call the protein fiber. So fibers are there just to make sure that there is more anchorage of one cell to the other with the ground substance. So on the protein fibers, we've got three of them. We've got the collagen, the elastic fiber, and also the reticular fiber. So collagen fiber is more strong, so it has got strength. It is therefore strength and cushioning. That is why we must see it in tendons, ligaments, let me just say in connective tissue, and it is the most abundant. So it's there for strength and cushioning. We also have elastic tissue. Elastic tissue is there for, I mean, elastic fiber is there for elasticity, meaning that there is need for things to be able to bend and come back to the original position. Right. So that is what we're able to see. Cells are able to bend and come back to original position like that. So this is going to include the fibers which are found in the skin, found in veins, found in arteries, and also in fetal tissue. We know that these are able to uh, to be elastic. In other words, they can bend and also come together like that, like the veins, the arteries. Let me say blood vessels. You are able to bend them and do not break them. So we also have reticular tissue. This one basically is made up of type 3 collagen. So it is there mostly for more like healing and also scar formation. So you are going to see this in kidneys, spleen, lymph nodes, and also in bone marrow. So this is an epithelial tissue. That's the one we want to discuss. So you can say that the epithelial tissue is the one on top in pink, but down you have got the support system of the epithelial tissue. So just below the epithelial tissue, we have got this blue. This is called the basement membrane. Basement membrane, also known as basal lamina. Now, when you are using a light microscope, you are going to see the basement membrane as only one thing. But when you get to use an electron microscope, you are going to see the basement membrane into the basal lamina and the reticular lamina. So these two are going to make up the basement membrane. And then below the basement membrane, you have got the connective tissue. In this case, this connective tissue is called the lamina propria. Right. So the epithelial tissue itself is avascular. It doesn't have any blood vessel. So that is why it is referred to as avascular. Now, where does it get the nutrients and how does it get to remove gases from the cells? And so there is these blood vessels and nerves which are near because they come to the connective tissue here. And so things are able to diffuse from the epithelial tissue into the blood vessels and also back like that, just through diffusion. So the epithelial tissue is also said to be polarized. So meaning that it has got two poles. You have got the upper part, which is called the apical part, and then you have got the down part, which is called the basal part. Just like when we say a magnet is having poles, meaning that it has got two parts, the north and the south. So same with this one. All right. So as we said, epithelial tissue is supported by a basement membrane. If you get to see under a light microscope, but under an electron microscope, you are going to be able to see two structures. The top is called the basal lamina, the down is called the reticular lamina. So the basal lamina also has got two components, which is the lamina densa fibrils and the lamina rara or lamina lucida. So these are simply things which are there for anchorage of the basal lamina or the connection of the epithelial tissue with the basement membrane. So an epithelial tissue can be classified or named depending on the shape that it has and the layers. So on the shape, if you have got a flat shape, that is going to be called squamous. If you have got a cuboidal shape, that is going to be called cuboidal epithelium. So a cuboid is simply a shape of four sides which have equal length. And then if it is longer going up than in the size, then that is going to be called columnar. Now, when you are using layers, if you only have one layer, that is going to be called a simple epithelium. And when you have got more than one layer, that is called stratified epithelium. So the simple, you are able now to combine the shape and also the layer. So if you have got a single epithelium, meaning that, I mean simple epithelium, this means that we only have one layer. Squamous means flat. So you can have a simple squamous epithelium or epithelia. So simple squamous is having one layer and also flat cells. So this epithelium is much well seen in those portions because it is that thin in portions where there's going to be diffusion of gases. So that is why we're going to see it in places like the capillaries and also in the alveoli where there's going to be diffusion. Okay, it also gets to line up the pleural. This is just in the lungs, the pericardial in the heart, peritoneal cavity, and also blood vessels. So this is how it gets to look. So I'm able to see that it has got a flat nucleus, and then the cells are also flat, and we are able to see that this is only one layer of cells coming from down to up. So that is simple squamous. Then we have got simple cuboidal, meaning that one layer, but it is a cuboid cell. So these are much more thicker as compared to simple squamous, right? So these are going to mostly line small ducts and tubules that may have excretory or secretory or absorptive functions. Now, because it is also a single layer and it is a cuboid, it means it is able to allow some things to be able to move, but not as much as a simple squamous is able to allow things to move. And so, in excretory, secretory, and absorptive functions, such as the collecting tubule or the kidney, the small excretory ducts of the salivary gland and the pancreas. So we're able to see this. So in the kidney, what gets to happen is that there is absorption of water and some minerals. So that is possible in there, but not as compared to the absorption that happens in the blood vessels. All right. So this is the kind of shape. It is a bit of long up, but also down. I mean, in the sides, the length is almost the same. We also have simple columnar. So the simple columnar is one layer, but it is longer going up. Now, this one is going to be much thicker than the simple cuboidal and the simple squamous. So what are the functions most for the simple columnar? It is also for absorptive surfaces, like in the small intestines and in the gallbladder, where you get to absorb water. Also for secretory surfaces like in the stomach where you need to secrete different things, right? So what would be the difference between this one and the simple cuboidal? The simple cuboidal is much more thinner as compared to the simple columnar. And so even the kind of diffusion that happens, you can see for the simple columnar, we talked about the kidneys. At least you can be able to absorb a lot of water there. But in the intestines, you don't have more absorption of water, right? So that doesn't happen here because the cells are much thicker. So this is how it gets to look like. So you can see that the nuclei is at the same level. That is how you get to tell if you have got one layer or not. Because if we had another nucleus there, also there, that would have meant they are different cells. So just the same simple columnar, which is longer going up, can also have cilia, and so you call it simple columnar ciliated epithelium or ciliated simple columnar. So in such a case, this one is going to mostly be found in the female reproductive tract, in the oviduct. We know that in the oviduct, we are going to have the egg coming from the ovaries, passing through the oviduct to the womb. So it has to be pushed. That is why we have the cilia there. And that kind of epithelium is simple columnar. So this is how it gets to look like. We have got some hairs on top. So that is the simple columnar ciliated. We can also have a pseudostratified columnar ciliated. Pseudostratified. Now, when we say pseudostratified, it means it appears as though it has got a single it is a single cell, I mean a single layer, but it's going to be appearing as if you have got more than one layer. That is a pseudo stratified. It is columnar because it is longer, ciliated because it has got cilia. And this one you're going to mostly see it in the respiratory tract. Okay. So the cilia is there in the respiratory tract to make sure that it gets to propel mucus. It pushes the mucus that has absorbed things like, let's say, it has absorbed sand or dust particles like that, or even some pathogens which are entering the body, so to be removed out of the body. So this should be columnar, it should be much thicker, because if it was that thin, imagine you have got the pathogens which have been trapped. What if they get to diffuse into the body? So it has to be thick because you don't want that to happen. Okay. So this is how it gets to look like. Now, as you are able to see, the nucleus is not on the same position for all these cells. And so that is why we call it pseudo-stratified, because it looks as though it is more than one layer. Because if you take this layer like this alone, it will show as if it's one layer. And then if you consider this level of the nucleus, it will seem as if it's another layer, and then on top it will seem as if it's another layer, but it is actually one cell, because you take it from the beginning going up like that. Okay, so that is just one cell, so it is pseudo stratified because it is one layer appearing as if they are a lot. So we have said the stratified epithelium can also be transitional or pseudo stratified. Now, when you talk about stratified, the stratified is having more than one layer. So the one which has got more than one layer can either be transitional or pseudo stratified. Now, the pseudo stratified, this is just one layer, but it appears as though it is more than one layer. So this is a simple epithelium which appears as stratified. Okay. Again, we can have this epithelium having keratin, so we call them keratinized epithelium, which have got keratin deposits on the surface, which makes it impermeable and dry. So you don't want keratin to be in portions such as the mouth, where you need the mouth not to be dry, but for the mouth it can have some portions, right? But you don't want keratin to be in places which is not supposed to be dry. So keratin, so this kind of epithelium is important in portion like the skin, the down of the feet, and also the hand. Okay, because it is dry there. So example, the kind of epithelium that is on our skin, that is called keratinized, stratified, squamous epithelium. It is stratified because it is more than one layer. Imagine it was just one layer, meaning that a slightest mistake, you are going to reach to the cells inside the body, and then you're going to be able to destroy them, because the epithelium is there for protection, such that when you burn yourself, or maybe when you hit yourself on the surface, it will quickly shed off and then another one is formed like that. It doesn't take time. But if you go deeper than the epithelium, this is where you start having scars, because you have gone deeper than the epithelium. But if you just remove the skin, the epithelium itself, you will not have a scar. Okay. So we have talked about the keratinized, stratified squamous. This squamous is flat. We also have ciliated, pseudo-stratified columnar. Ciliated because it has got cilia. It is pseudo-stratified because it looks as though there are many layers, but it is just one layer. It is columnar because it's much longer. So this one with the cilia is going to be seen in the respiratory passage, because we have to push things out through like the nose. So when cilia gets to push, let's say mucus combined with dust, it will push it up, and you are going to decide either to spit or to take it in again to swallow it, so that you are able to remove it by other mechanisms. There is also stereo-ciliated pseudo-stratified columnar. Now, stereo-ciliated Stereocilia is a bit different from cilia. Cilia is just hair. But when you're talking about stereocilia, this one is made up of cytoskeleton. So stereociliated pseudostratified columnar, this one is found in the vas different, and the epididymis. This is just in the male reproductive system. That is why we find the stereociliated. So it is different from ciliated, right? So the pseudostratified, as we saw, it looks something like this. We can see this appears as if this is one layer because of the position of the nucleus, and then this as another layer. But if we can see, we have got different cells. We have got some cells which are shorter, others are longer, reaching to the top, but it is just one cell. We also have the transition epithelium. The transition epithelium is a type of stratified because it has got many layers. Now, the only thing is that these layers, you have got some layers which are cuboidal, others are columnar, others are squamous. So there are different types of cells. That is why it is called transitional, because the cells just changes, right? So what are the types of epithelium that we have? We have got simple squamous, which is flat and one layer. We have got simple cuboidal, one layer but cuboid. Simple columnar, one layer but much longer. We also have stratified squamous, meaning a lot of layers, but the cells are what? Flat. Now, for the stratified squamous, you look at the cells which are on top. The cells which are on top are supposed to be flat. The cells which are down might not be flat. As we are able to see, these cells which are down here, they are not flat. Okay, but the cells on top are flat. That is why we are saying stratified squamous. Squamous because the top cells are flat. We can also have stratified cuboidal, meaning a lot of layers, but it's cuboidal. We can also have pseudo stratified, which we said it is just one layer, but it appears as though they are many because the position of the nucleus is different. And then we can have transitional epithelium. So this is a table to get to summarize everything. So we see the simple squamous epithelium is mostly located in air sacs of lungs and the lining of the heart. Now, to understand how we can really know where it is located, we need to know the function which it gets to perform. So, the simple squamous epithelium mostly is there to allow the passage by diffusion of substances and filtration. So, where does filtration and diffusion happen in the body? So, that is where we get to talk about the lungs, the heart, because we have got blood, there are blood vessels. Also in the lymphatic system, we are not going to be able to include in the kidney here because the kidney is going to be the next one. Okay. So in the kidney, of course, we have got filtration that happens there, but it is not just any filtration because blood comes at very high speed. That is why it is able to pass through the glomerulus to go into the Bowman's capsule because of high speed. Otherwise, it is not that easy for diffusion to get to happen in the kidney. So also have the simple cuboidal. What is the function of the simple cuboidal? That is for secretion and absorption. So you get to secrete things and absorb. So where are you going to find the simple cuboidal epithelium? So you're going to find it in small glands and in the kidney. We know that in the kidney there is absorption that gets to happen. You get to absorb salts, glucose, which went into the urine. Okay, before urine is formed, glucose has to be reabsorbed into the blood. So that happens in the kidney, and that epithelium there is simple cuboidal. We also have simple columnar. What's the function of simple columnar? It is there for absorption also. It also secretes mucus and enzymes. That is a simple columnar. So simple columnar can be ciliated or not ciliated, just like any other can be ciliated or not. So ciliated tissue, like in bronchi, in the uterus, okay, and also we have got the digestive tract. We have got simple columnar. In the digestive tract, we don't want to have something that is too light because things might be able to diffuse into the blood from the lumen of the intestine. That is why we have this one, which is a bit of thicker. So that is the, now we say it is ciliated. Of course, ciliated is not in the stomach. In the stomach, or let me say mostly in the digestive tract, you are going to have microvilli. So these epithelial cells can undergo some modifications, forming microvilli, or you are going to have some cilia, or you are going to have keratin, depending on the function. But for this one, which is mostly in the digestive tract, because you want absorption to happen, you are the kind of, so the cell is going to change, is going to have some special characters such as microvilli to help in the absorption. But cilia is going to be like in the uterus, where, I mean, the uterine tubes, like the fallopian tube, where there is need to push the egg forward. Also, the pseudostratified. Pseudostratified, it is also thick. As we can see, it is much longer going up. So, what is the function of the pseudostratified columnar? It is also there for secretion of things like mucus, and also to the ciliated tissue. So if it has got cilia, in a case of cilia pseudostratified columnar, the cilia is going to be there to push the mucus. And so we are going to find this in the trachea and also much of the upper respiratory tract. So this is upper respiratory tract, not the down one, because when you go into the air sacs, you have simple squamous because that is where diffusion is happening. But for the upper respiratory tract, you have got the pseudostratified, because you need this kind of tough environment to be able, the thick environment, the pseudostratified is much tougher to be able to push things going up with these airs which are present on top. So I've got also stratified squamous. It is a lot of layers, but it is flat. So the function for this one is for protection against abrasion, right? So the stratified squamous, this is where you mostly have a lot of friction getting to happen. So it is there for protection in places like the mouth, esophagus, and the vagina. Imagine the vagina had simple squamous epithelium. So this can easily shed off, and this would be causing a lot of pain. So you need something which is a bit of thicker to be able to make sure that there is that protection against such a friction that gets to happen. And so you can think of the stratified squamous as being in those portions which have got the skin that is similar to that which is in the mouth, which goes on also in the esophagus and also in the vagina. So that kind of lining. Also have the stratified cuboidal. Now, the stratified cuboid is much thicker. Of course, we have got a lot of layers, but because of cuboid, it is much thicker than the stratified squamous. So this one is there for protective tissue, meaning it is there for more in protection. So we're going to find it in things like the sweat glands, salivary glands, and the mammalian gland. This is basically in the breast. So stratified cuboidal in protective tissue. Mostly you're going to find it in different glands. You have got the stratified columnar. The stratified columnar, of course, is much more thicker. So this one is there for secretion and protection. We are going to find it in the male urethra and also the ducts of some glands. Imagine the male urethra had a very simple epithelium, like a simple squamous, and then you have got urine which gets to pass at a very fast rate, and also sperms like that. So it could easily get to shed off. So that is why you need something that is more thicker, okay? Because when the urine and let's say the sperms are coming at a very fast rate, there is more or friction that is getting to happen, pushing this kind of epithelium on the sides. And so you need something much more thicker. You also have the transitional epithelium. The transitional epithelium, the one which changes, this one we just need to know it is there to allow urinary glands to expand and stretch, more similar as the one I'm from explaining from the stratified columnar. So this one is found on the lines of the bladder, on the urethra, and also ureters. So urethra is a stratified columnar. But when we're talking about the urethra and ureters, this is coming from the kidneys going into the connecting to the blood and also the bladder itself. That is going to be transitional epithelium. They get to change like that. So that is it. We are able also to use this table to just make sure that we see some different parts which has got different epitheliums. So you can see for the transition epithelium in the inner urethra, the bladder, and also a part of the urethra. Okay, just a part, not everything. And then the stratified columnar, it is more in the male urethra and parts of the pharynx, meaning that this is not in the female urethra, it is in the male, that is the stratified columnar. All right, let's consider some of these questions. Squamous epithelium has dash nucleus, flat, round, oval. So we know squamous is a flat cell. So even the nucleus is going to be flat. So when you're talking about the cuboid, it is a cube. So the nucleus is going to be round. If you talk about the columnar, it is much longer up. So the nucleus is going to be oval. Columnar ciliated epithelium is found in. So we're talking about columnar ciliated epithelium. So it's supposed to have cilia. So we can actually remove some parts which we know we can't find cilia there. In the stomach, we don't have cilia. We have got microvilli, right? Also in the uterus, we know also the gallbladder. We also okay. I just want us to take note of one slide which I showed. I think I just can't remember it. Okay. So columnar ciliated. Now remember the cilia is supposed to be found in the uterine tube. Why in the uterine tube? To be able to push the egg that is coming from the ovary into the womb. So uterine tube, you have got columnar ciliated epithelium. Pseudostratified epithelium with a stereocilia is seen in. We're talking about pseudostratified epithelium, but this one is special, not just pseudostratified, but with a stereocilia. So you know that for stereocilia, definitely it has to be the epididymis and also the vas deferens. So it is A and C. Stratified squamous epithelium for the stratified squamous, meaning a lot of layers, and then the cells are squamous. Now remember we said squamous cells can just be on top and then down the cells are different. Has squamous cells, we know this is true. It has got squamous cells, has got cuboidal cells. We know this can be true because for the stratified squamous, the top layer can be squamous, but the down layers can be of different shapes. And then polyhedral cells, this is true because we have got different uh, shapes like that. So all of the above. Which of the following is true? We have got cilia, microvilli, and flagella. We want to tell where it is found. Now, cilia, we want to find it in the epithelium, which does a work of pushing things, like not in the intestines. A sperm is not pushed by cilia, it moves by itself, at least in the respiratory tract. We are able to find cilia there to be able to push mucus. Microvilli, of course, is found in the intestines for absorption, and then flagella is found in a sperm for movement. What kind of epithelium is in the vagina? Simple squamous, pseudostratified cuboidal, non-keratinized stratified squamous, ciliated stratified columnar. Now remember what we said? We said in the vagina we have got the kind of epithelium there is supposed to be squamous. It should be flat. And then there are a lot of layers to avoid that kind of friction. But it should not be any stratified squamous. It should be non-keratinized. Non-keratinized meaning it doesn't have keratin. So keratin is mostly found on dry places. So imagine there was keratin here, meaning that it would be dry. And if it is dry, there's not going to be friction. There's going to be more friction, and that can cause bruises during sex. So that is why there is non-keratinized stratified squamous. Thank you so much for being present to the end. Stay blessed.